Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Lundblad, Director of Research at the Kenan Institute of Private Enterprise. And this week, we've been talking about the labor market at the Institute, the extent to which there are or are not shortages in the market. And we talk about some of the short-run effects that are pushing and pulling on labor supply and labor demand. But actually, what I would like to do for a moment here is look a little bit beyond the here and now and identify something that's a bit deeper. And so the notion of labor market, it's actually a misnomer. I mean, instead, what we have is a set of highly disaggregated markets for different skills. And so the interesting question is the extent to which the COVID experiment has accelerated certain trends that were already in place that are going to make some demand, skills on demand more acutely than others, and whether the experiment has also forced the initiation of new trends, which will also fundamentally change those skills that are or are not on demand. And so when I say this is a longer term effect, I actually want to go slightly back in time to the precipice of the COVID experiment, to the forced experiment that was the pandemic. And Manpower, that's the HR group, they do a really interesting, almost annual survey on what they call the talent shortage problem. And what they identify in 2019, so on the precipice of the COVID pandemic, 69% of respondents, so people in industry that they're working with, identified talent shortages, a skills shortage, as a significant impediment to strategic initiatives and experiments. And that's a number that had doubled kind of over the 10 years that preceded it. So a dearth of important skills has been a problem with us now for some time, and it precedes the pandemic. And when you ask them, the respondents, the particular skills that are in relatively short supply from their perspective, the number one answer are skilled trades: electricians, welders, mechanics. IT is shortly after that, specialized truck drivers, things of this nature that are fundamental to industry, fundamental to the realization of growth opportunities, but increasingly expensive. And so what's interesting in my conversations with executives over the last 10 plus years or so, the kind of Federal Reserve narrative that a weak labor market was a justification for significant stimulus on the monetary policy side, because there was a relative absence of wage growth and hence inflationary pressures. That's just not a narrative that resonated with many with whom I was having a conversation. And indeed, they were often arguing about the extent to which certain laborers are becoming increasingly expensive. And so they've had to come up with very creative solutions to try to tackle that problem. So specialized training or joint venturing with technical schools or trade schools and the like. And so my contention is that something that was brewing before has now been simply accelerated by the COVID experiment. We now have sort of to semi-permanently think about the labor budget going forward. And we have to think differently about its composition and its component of overall the overall pursuit of growth opportunities. So my hypothesis is the COVID forced experiment and these kinds of trends, those that have been accelerated, perhaps in retailing, as an example, and those that have been perhaps initiated. So we might think about, for instance, what does it mean for work from home, and what does it mean for business travel and the like. I think these have only had the effect of accelerating this kind of balkanization. So the labor market's balkanization then means that some skills, and hence certain laborers, and the relative dearth of those skills, are going to be increasingly expensive going forward, and are going to inherit the kind of initiatives that have been brought about as a result of this experiment. And so what that means then, I guess, are really two things. Number one, for business leaders, thinking credibly about how to make commensurate investments in labor in order to pursue growth opportunities when that labor, and in particular the subset of skills that are in relatively short supply, are considerably more expensive. That's not going away. That's just fundamentally with us henceforth. It was already brewing, and this has only been accelerated. And the second is for policymakers, right? So how do we think about income inequality in a world like that? I mean, the acerbic political discourse has long been informed by a debate between the merits of capital owners and laborers. That's not what we're talking about here. And indeed, the history books are replete with examples of exactly that. Instead, we're talking about laborers experiencing significantly different degrees of compensation. And so what do we think about in terms of income inequality in a setting like that? I think these are two fundamental challenges for business leaders and policymakers that are now with us, and they get to this skills mismatch problem that is not going away. If anything, it's been significantly accelerated as a result of the COVID experiment.